Well, we want to welcome you to Kempner Sports. This is the NFL Draft special episode. In fact, I think I'm going to do a bunch of these videos, but this one I'm so excited for. I want to welcome to the show my guest, Stuart Dixon, which I consider a draft guru. And whenever I need to know something about college football prospects, I call Stuart. So I think you're going to really enjoy this segment. Stuart, welcome. Good to have you back, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a while to be on the show. Last time we talked a lot of Canucks, and this time we're going to go back to our other passion, which has been football. The value of this sport has been just incredible for the foundation of our friendship. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this unbelievable class. It's a very deep draft class all around. I think we are going to be talking about this one for years to come. Again, not flashy at every single position, but a lot of the major positions, there's some home run talent here. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. So I'm so excited for you. As you can see, he's a Raiders fan, and because of that, I wore my Raiders jersey.
I love it.
Rocking a Marshawn Lynch Raiders jersey. Like, come on. I do want the Raiders jersey. I want is the Bo Jackson. So I need to get that one. But this matches. But I'm Packers all the way.
I know you're Packers
all the way.
You know what? It's funny. Both teams were in the very first Super Bowl where the Packers dominated the Raiders back in '66.
Yeah, I remember that game like it was yesterday.
Two of the best franchises in the NFL. So thanks for the appreciation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's get into this draft. It's happening April 29th. So it's a Thursday. Round 1 starts. It's going to be super interesting. Every year I am stoked about the NFL draft. So why don't we just dive in? Stuart is going to give us his top 5 at every position because really drafting is not an exact science. People think, oh, how come you didn't draft this guy and then you drafted this guy? Because sometimes it's by need and sometimes it's by, skilled position. You're like, I'm taking the best player that's available. And so there's all kinds of okay, first of all, Stuart, don't you think it'd be amazing to be in the war room?
Incredible.
I don't care what team you're in with. It would just be so interesting, especially those ones that the phone's ringing off the hook and you want to trade this. Like the Patriots have always traded back, and that would be so interesting. Or even when Cleveland had all those high picks, imagine the calls they got. Imagine the discussion. I would have loved to be a part of that. So.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that too, because war room culture is starting to be a really important thing, especially this is the fact that this is the second COVID draft that the NFL has experienced. The Los Angeles Rams, for example, actually bought a house on the ocean front in Malibu, and they just turned it in, and I'm not kidding you, I can share you the link with this, but they turned it into their draft war room with a pool and everything, and they're like, we just want to embrace a culture of winning in paradise. And the Rams are totally out there, but I think that's going to become a thing where teams are going to actually have draft headquarters, because it's just so important in terms of embracing the culture. We saw it with Pete Carroll before the lockdown happened with the shirt and everything, trading it with DK when they were doing his interview.
That's so cool.
Those kind of moments are they're becoming more and more important. So it's funny you mentioned that right off the get-go. I think that experience would just be totally unforgettable and immaculate altogether.
Mm-hmm. So when we were talking, you were saying that and I don't know if you want to start here, but the quarterbacks might be the strongest that you've seen in a long time. So
this quarterback class, Trevor, you know what? I'm not going to say it's up to the 1983 class where they've had 6 go in the first round and 3 of them ended up being Hall of Famers, Elway, Kelly, and Marino, but it's got that kind of feel with it. We know, or we have very good intel with what the 49ers did to trade up to number 3 with the Dolphins, that 3 quarterbacks will be taken with the first 3 picks. So that's 3 right there. Now, you look at classes that had multiple quarterbacks going. You think of 04 with Roethlisberger, Manning, Rivers. You think of Luck and RG3, first round, Russell Wilson later on. But this class, it is loaded with not just top end strong arm talent, Trevor, but athleticism and strong intangibles too. Very rarely do you come across a quarterback class where you could have 3, maybe even 4 prospects that are completely polished, like with the leadership, with the mentality, with the awareness, the memorization, all these different things that make up, really the most challenging position to evaluate in the NFL. We've seen a few teams hit on gold, and we've seen a lot of teams miss. So I'll just start right off with my top 5 at this one. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, the Clemson quarterback, he's a cut above everyone else for sure. Top recruit in high school, top recruit in college, national champion winner, multiple times in the college football playoffs. You can never really measure how bad a guy wants it. And he's a very unique player in his own respect. Like, he's not super fast, but he's got a very strong deep ball, very, very accurate. Maybe not the most amount of velocity compared to some of the other quarterbacks overall. But when I look at him in terms of comparison, I really see a lot of like Jim Kelly, like the Bills quarterback with him, like a tremendous leader, could really rally the offense around together. If you want someone more recent, I think like a Phillip Rivers is what Trevor Lawrence is. Definitely more athletic than both of those guys, can really move the football, and, comes from a winning program altogether. One at high school, one at college level. Right. I think he's like, the Jags would be silly not to take him. I think they're definitely going to take him. He already said a big thank you to the Jags fans for the wedding gifts he received from his registry, which is, again, a fantastic story. But Lawrence, clear cut number 1.
Okay. And so who's number 2?
So this is where it gets interesting. I do have Zach Wilson at 2, the BYU quarterback, and who the Jets are poised to select as well. Remember, they traded Darnold to Carolina, so they're definitely going in for quarterback. There's no secret there. Zach Wilson's a bit of an interesting player overall. Like, a decent amount of pass attempts at BYU, but BYU, bit of a smaller school in the big Division I conferences, but they have produced a lot of good quarterbacks. Maybe not so much of late, but definitely in the 80s and 90s, they were a perennial quarterback factory. Again, winning program. He can really throw the football, like very strong arm. Not the biggest guy, but very, very athletic. For me, it's kind of hard to really find a recent comparable for this guy. But you know what? I kind of look back at the college tape of former BYU quarterback Steve Young, and I saw a lot of similarities. Very athletic, can move around in the pocket. Lots of motors, hustle, like, really is good at communication, tremendous at making audibles at the line of scrimmage. Right. He's going to have success from just what he can read within the box overall. So, I like him. I compare him to kind of Steve Young. I mean, maybe the ceiling for him is like a Kirk Cousins. I know some people might not want to hear that as well, but again, very similar. Smart, cerebral quarterback, can make a lot of the short throws, can really test the defense to get him into a play where they want him to go. I think the Jets are going to do pretty well with this kid if they do end up drafting him. Mike LaFleur, who is Matt LaFleur's brother, is the offensive coordinator for the Jets, was quarterback coach with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. He comes on with the staff with Salah, so they're going to rework the offense altogether. I'd expect a lot of quick throws, and I think Zach Wilson can really deliver on those.
Awesome.
Speaking of those 49ers, so they did that trade to get up to 3 with the Dolphins in this crazy 3 first-round pick deal. The Dolphins trade tree from Laramie Tunsil is something that I encourage everyone to check out.
Yeah.
But everybody's wondering, okay, who are the Niners going to take at quarterback? Because it's really funny. Remember when the Cardinals had the first pick in the 19 draft, and they said Josh Rosen is our guy after drafting him in 2018, and they said, well, yeah, they're poised to draft Kyler Murray. As soon as they drafted Kyler Murray, they shipped Rosen to Miami for a second. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have that happen to him as soon as they make their pick at quarterback. The question is who. So for me, my number 3 quarterback, I know a lot of people say, well, it might be Mac Jones or Trey Lance at 3 going to the Niners, but my number 3 quarterback is Justin Fields, and the Ohio State kid, former Georgia Bulldog transfer. If you don't think that this kid doesn't have it, go watch the semifinal game this past year. This guy played with broken ribs, was throwing the ball super deep. He's ran a super fast 40, and just today they found out at his medical examination in Indianapolis that he actually suffers with epilepsy. So here's a guy that took Ohio State to the college football finals against Clemson with broken ribs, battling epilepsy, so taking medication for that. Like just getting beat around, throws for accounts for like 6 touchdowns, and he's got an absolute hose. I think he has the strongest arm in the class. I think he's definitely the fastest quarterback in this class, and I think he's the most athletic in this class. I think so highly of him that the comparable I chose for him, and I know you're going to just like lose it. I really don't like to make high ceiling comparables, but I think of Michael Vick. And
Wow.
I think of Michael Vick for this reason. I look at Fields and I'm like, in the open field, in terms of making a man miss one-on-one, can he do what Vick did? And I think he totally can. Like he's got a strong arm. Like remember, Vick had a very strong arm when he came out of Virginia Tech. I think if the Niners take Fields, that's the perfect quarterback for their offense, because you think about it, in that division, you'd have Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, and Justin Fields. Like, wow. I hope the Niners get smart. Now, my other 2 quarterbacks here, just really quickly. You got the national champion, Mac Jones, as my 4. Now, a lot of people are really down on Mac Jones because the body. They look at him and they see dad bod, the 1-pack, the barrel. You and I can certainly relate to Mac Jones, but that's why I like him. I'm like, yeah, go out there and sling it kind of deal.
I don't have a 6-pack. I got a keg, right?
Yeah, I got a keg as well. And I look at Mac Jones at what he did. And Alabama hasn't had a lot of success at quarterback since Joe Namath and Ken Stabler. But those, like, Mac Jones, for what he did under Saban, 41 touchdown passes in his only season as a starter. I looked at every other Alabama quarterback. Tua came close in the 30s. Mac Jones, and he played with great receivers, which we'll get to later. Mm-hmm. But you know what? He's got a good, strong arm. I think he has a little more intangibles at the line of scrimmage than most people think. I think a lot of people think he's a real system quarterback, but he demonstrated tremendous leadership in a short season in the SEC and getting Bama back to national title contention. I get he's playing behind an all-world offensive line. But you know what? In the SEC, if you win, that is something to be said, because that is like junior NFL.
Right.
And as we've seen with Alabama, the SEC West is a tough division. LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, tons of big schools, Kentucky. Kentucky's in the East now, but like, you know what I mean? Like very tough schools altogether. Mm-hmm. So I have Mac Jones there. I think a lot of Joe Flacco with him. I also think a bit of Roethlisberger with him. Maybe not in terms of the size, but in terms of like just, keeping it simple, standing tall in the pocket. Flacco for me is like probably the best comparison for Jones. My last quarterback is Trey Lance. And a lot of people might be like, well, I have Lance at 3 or 4 or whatever. The reason why I have Trey Lance so low is he has, out of all the quarterbacks in this class, and there's like 12 of them, in terms of draft eligible players, least amount of pass attempts. 319 pass attempts as the starter. That is not enough tape for me to go off of to say he's a first-round pick. Now, somebody will take him in the first round. I have no doubt somebody will. There's a ton of teams lining up to get competition and depth at quarterback. But with Trey Lance, my issue is, and it's no disrespect to playing at North Dakota State, FCS school where Carson Wentz went to, but it's the lack of tape, and it's the lack of tape against good competition. Has tons of skills, the strong arm, good vision, athletic in the pocket, smaller guy, good leadership, probably the second best leader to Lawrence overall. But I just don't know if he's got all the tools to be successful at the NFL level, given he didn't have as much snap exposure compared to some of these other quarterback prospects. It's nothing against the player. It's just more so I think the system and the competition may work against him. My comparable for him is really tough. I chose Robert Griffin III mainly because similar build, athletic wise, also one year starter at Baylor. but had more tape on him overall. And now, of course, RG3 with the injury, we all know what happened to his career, but he had a tremendous ceiling. Lance could follow that ceiling, but again, I'm not a big believer in him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting list. I would go Fields too. That's my personal opinion.
I put him up there too, Trevor.
but that's the thing. Like, we never knew Trubisky was going to go number 1 or whatever he went to, or that was nuts. And so we don't know what's going to happen. It depends on who likes who.
Well, and like, I like Fields more than Wilson overall, but I think you got to put Wilson at the 2 just because we know he's going to be the second pick. But they're both really close. Like, this class, I think there's going to be 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks.
Okay,
Kellen Mond from Texas A&M could sneak into the first round too, and there could be 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Right. That happens. Wow.
So I don't know if you want to get into this, but so if you're thinking it's go your top 3, those picks are going. So where does Mac end up? Where does Trey end up? Like, what do you think? Like, are you thinking the Patriots are going to go there?
Well, I think the draft starts with the Falcons first and foremost. Like basically quarterbacks 3 through 5, Fields, Jones, or Lance. whoever goes at 3, the Falcons, if they like a guy there, they might take a quarterback to groom for Matt Ryan, similar to what the Packers did for Jordan Love. But I think the Falcons are going to trade, and I think the Falcons are going to trade because the guy that they probably want, the 49ers are going to take. Mm-hmm. And I could see New England trading up for sure. They have the draft capital to do so. I can see the Broncos trading up as well. They also have the draft capital to do so. Both of those teams also attended pro days for Fields, Jones, and Lance. So they've been keeping their eye and doing their homework on the quarterback class. I think the Falcons would also be smart if they can get down in the first round and maybe get a top player at a certain position for them. They definitely have a lot of holes on defense and the offensive line. But I do think we're going to see a certain team trade up for quarterback. We've seen it happen a lot this past 5 years, really. Bears did it, trading up for 1 spot for Trubisky. The Mahomes, Kansas City trading up to get Mahomes. The Bills with Josh Allen. So we have seen it before. Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, of course, Titans and the Browns cashed in on those picks. So it's crazy what they had to give up.
Get your popcorn ready, boys.
Something's gonna happen.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Okay, so what skill position you want to go to next?
I think we should talk about this wide receiver class, and this wide receiver class for me is the best class in the last 10 years.
Wow.
I think it's better than the 17 class, the 14 class. I think it's better than the 2011 class. And those, we've seen some really, really good wide receivers come in of late. I think this class beats them all. I know DeVonta Smith won the Heisman Trophy this year as a receiver from Alabama, but he's not my number 1. My number 1 is Jamar Chase from LSU. You know what? It's super funny, Trevor. When you look at the receivers that have been produced in the NFL over the last 10 years, LSU and Alabama lead the way. And it's no surprise that I got 2 players from each of those schools in my top 5. Mm-hmm. Chase, for me, you look at what he did with Burrow in 19 in that national championship season. And, even though he got his season cut short a bit here, he is a tremendous, tremendous player catching the football. Very good in traffic, has excellent vision, crisp route runner, very good ball get off. I really want to make the Davante Adams comparison here, but I'm not going to give him that much respect. But I do think he is Anquan Boldin-like. And the reason why I say that is he is tremendously physical after catching the football. When we see receivers catch the ball, Trevor, we think of, the run after the catch, what they had to do. But this guy after is just a junkyard dog with the football. Like, I do not want to tackle this guy if I'm a corner. And with LSU, we've seen, crisp. They produce all kinds of different receivers in terms of skill. Beckham, Landry, just to name a few. Like they really have done an excellent. I don't know who their receiver coach is, but whoever that guy is should get a job in the NFL because they have just churned out talent. I have Heisman Trophy winner DeVonta Smith as my 2. Now Smith weighed in today at, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
166 pounds, soaking wet. He actually weighed in at his pro day at 171 pounds, and like the media, like the fantasy guys I follow, were just like, how did he drop so much weight from his pro day to his physical? I'm like, maybe he had to stop at the bathroom before he stopped on the scale, boys. Like, pump the brakes a bit. Like, it is Indy. It's a bit of a colder state.
For a couple
yeah, exactly. So, but this guy here, like, he's small legs and everything. And I know everyone's talking about the durability issues, but I'll tell you one thing you can't buy in terms of grooming talent in the NFL, and that's speed. And
speed and route running, right? If you have that.
And with him, what's sensational about DeVonta Smith is this guy almost has an option route every time he snaps from the football. Like if he's man-to-man on a corner, he's so smart to know what that corner's tendencies are, whether he's going to go, play bump and run or man up or playing a deep zone or shallow flat, whatever. And he almost just, like, you go watch the tape with this guy, what he signals to Jones with, like he got open a lot. And in terms of receivers for me to find a comparable for, in terms of like those kind of intangibles, the one guy that comes to mind was also a small receiver, played in an offense where, had option routes almost every play, got open a ton, created a ton of separation, similar size. And that one guy for me is Marvin Harrison. I think a ton of Marvin Harrison when I watched DeVonta Smith play. And keep in mind too, DeVonta Smith, or Marvin Harrison rather, was playing with Donovan McNabb back in college. And a lot of people didn't curtail McNabb for the body and everything. Remember, he got booed in Philly in the '99 draft because they wanted Ricky Williams. And I think that comparable is actually has a lot of credit with it, just because both of those guys had to get bigger in the NFL to become successful. And I think Smith will put on the weight to get to that level, but he's a very cerebral receiver, very smart player. A coach is going to love him. I don't know if he's going to be top 10 in the draft, but I do think he's going to go within the first 15 picks.
Right. Cool. That's your number 2.
So 3, I got his teammate, Jalen Waddle. And Waddle's a smaller guy in terms of height and everything, but he's got a bit more, girth in terms of his body. Very fast receiver, creates a ton of separation after the catch. Mm-hmm. Like, you go watch this guy. He is an absolute track star. I think he might even be a bit of a better route runner, like in the mid to deep routes compared to DeVonta Smith, especially on digs, post routes, corner routes, comeback routes. And the kind of receiver I think of when I watched him play in terms of like creating that separation, that mid and deep levels, is Chad Johnson or Chad Ochocinco, one of my all-time favorite players. You look at what Chad did early on in his career coming from Oregon State into Cincy, similar kind of player, deep threat. I'm going to create separation, and I'm just going to give her every chance I go. I think Jalen Waddle is that player. Antonio Brown is another great comparison, I think, for him as well. They're going to, I think Waddle, you just got to find ways to get him in the football. Could you imagine him in the Kansas City Chiefs or the Baltimore Ravens? They would love to have a player like him, and just in terms of creating matchups. Mm-hmm. I have Jamar Chase's teammate, Terrence Marshall, at 4. Now, he's a huge receiver, Trevor. He's 6'4", 210 pounds. Right. He's got 35-inch arms, a wingspan of 80, 81 inches or whatever it is in terms of reach. He's just, he is an absolute freak. Big, tall guy. Not the most fleet of foot in terms of, pure speed, but we're seeing big receivers come in and have big success, even if they aren't burners. Metcalf, A.J. Brown. And for me, the guy I think of when that stands out to me, I think he's a carbon copy of Mike Evans. We've seen Mike Evans when he came out of A&M, big, contested catches, deeps, fade routes everywhere. He caught a ton of balls for Winston, and look what he did with Brady this year. He was actually underutilized in that Bucs offense, but you know what? If you were like 10 yards out of the end zone and you needed a fade route, Evans would get it. Terrence Marshall can do the exact same thing. He might have to go to a certain team to have success. But I think a team that says, hey, we need to get somebody that's like, can really jump heavy in the end zone. And I think he's that guy. My last receiver is also from the SEC. It's funny, all 5 of my receivers are from the SEC, which is just crazy. But there's a lot of other guys in other conferences I like, but they're just not as good as this guy in terms of ceiling. And that's a guy named Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Now, there's another prominent pass catcher, which we'll get to in this episode, from Florida as well. But Toney got a lot of one-on-one looks because of Kyle Pitts, the tight end, drawing a lot of coverage. Now, Kyle Trask, the quarterback at Florida, he loved Toney on third down. He loved him on screen passes, jailbreak screens, slant routes, hitch routes, comeback routes. Kadarius Toney, he has a lot of upper body strength for a receiver. He's a decent sized guy, about 6'2", 6'3", about $190 overall. But man, this guy has just got a motor, and he honestly, when he has the football, Trevor, he actually wants to get physical. He's almost like a running back in that respect. I see a lot of Dez Bryant in him. Remember when Dez was at the peak of his game? When he would get the ball, he'd just be ferocious. He would be like, I'm you can't tackle me. You can't rip the ball from me. And Toney's got that kind of attitude. I think what detracts against him versus the other 4 receivers I mentioned is the fact that he kind of played second fiddle to Pitts. Even though Pitts really got a lot of looks this past year as a starter, he didn't really have that before. And Toney dealt with injuries in his first year red shirt as well. So I look at him as a potential high ceiling player. Could be a really good value pick for somebody in the late first or early second.
Right. That's good. That's good, man. Okay. So what position are we going to next?
So I think we'll talk about the running back class really quick, and then I'll talk about the tight end class after. The running back class this year, I know a lot of people tend to focus on running backs coming out of school because they're young legs, pretty good prospects for fantasy and whatnot here. This running back class for me is average to below average in terms of players. I know that you might be saying, well, Stu, did you not see the college football playoffs with Najee Harris and Etienne? Right. Oh, I've been watching those guys. Don't get me wrong, but I look at some of the players that have been produced over the last little while. I don't know if I see a Derrick Henry or Kamara in this class, even though some certain analysts want to make those comparisons. So just to start, I do have Najee Harris as my 1.
Okay.
Now,
so Bama boy.
This might create some controversy because a lot of people like Etienne, the Clemson running back, at 1. I'm going to tell you why Harris, I think, is going to be a more polished player.
So then do you have Etienne as 2?
I have Etienne 2. Okay. But I have Harris as 1 for this reason alone. He really improved his pass catching this past year with Mac Jones. He also cut down his weight a bit. And unselfishly, he was asked to block for Jones a lot on third down, and he took on that role with such pedigree. I think this player is a complete football player. Alabama, as you know, has had such a strong pedigree producing world-class running backs. Totally. Henry, Jacobs, Kamara before he went to Tennessee, Kenyon Drake, who played as a backup, if you can believe it, Mark Ingram, of course. I think Najee Harris is just the next great Alabama running back. And you know what? My comparable for him, I think you're going to really love this because you probably hated this player when you watched him growing up, but I think he's Matt Forte-like. Matt Forte, as you know, good. heavy runner, very fast, could catch a ton out of the backfield, do it all player, extremely durable. I think Harris is Harris is a Matt Forte-like player.
Wow.
And maybe that's not the sexiest name, but people forget how good Matt Forte was. And I think Harris is going to definitely fall into that, into that slot. Travis Etienne. Now, he, of course, played on a great Clemson program over the last 3 years. Got to play with Lawrence, got to play with Watson in his freshman year. So he has seen it all. How lucky is this guy in terms of who he's had to play with? My knock on Travis Etienne is the fact that this guy has had a ton of miles for a draft prospect coming into the league. Now, we've seen college running backs where they've just gone set records left, right, and center or had ridiculous seasons. But when they get to the NFL, they burn out. I think of guys like LaMichael James at Oregon, Monte Ball at Wisconsin. And I think there's some risk with ETN for that reason alone. It's not to take anything away from his talent. He is a very fast football player, excellent change of direction, very good one-cut runner. Very very cerebral runner. I chose Shady McCoy as his comparable, but I kind of see some flashes in his game of, like, I don't know if you remember this guy, but Kevin Jones from the Lions, kind of a more of a tweener like player, can be physical, but I'm not as high on him as most people are.
The one guy, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, I got one guy who's climbed up my list heavily is Javonte Williams from North Carolina Tar Heels. He is probably next to Harris the most physical back in this class. Right. I see a lot of Edgerrin James in his game, kind of like a 3-down back, can do it all. Very very shifty. He also split time with Michael Carter, who's also a draft prospect in this class. Probably going to be a mid-tier player. He's not in my top 5, but he was very productive in a timeshare role. I have Kenny Gainwell, who actually sat out this past year because of COVID. Running back out of Memphis. Memphis has produced a lot of
4.
He's at 4. Yeah, Kenny Gainwell. Great name for running back, eh? So he sat out this year. But Memphis has produced a lot of great running backs: Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson. He out of all those 4, probably the most athletic, shifty player. I compared him to like Clinton Portis a bit, like very very solid runner in between the tackles, can make a lot of guys miss. And he doesn't have a lot of miles on him either. So I think he's going to be a good value player. And then my 5th, and you're going to love this guy, proud Canadian from Sherwood Park, Alberta, Oklahoma State Cowboys, Chuba Hubbard. Chuba is a beast, and a lot of people don't have him in the top 5 because he's had some fumbling issues and pass protection issues. But I think he's just as good of a runner as these other 4 running backs.
I like that. It's bold.
And the guy I see a lot of in his game is Arian Foster. Like, people forget how good Arian Foster was running the ball. Not a sexy player, completely undrafted. I think Chuba is just like Arian Foster.
That's great. Okay, so any of those guys, do you think they're actually going to be drafted in the first round? Because it's been changing how the second round has really been a lot of running backs, and Saquon Barkley's the exception here. But like, who do you think 1 or 2 of these guys will be drafted in the first round?
Yeah, I think Harris and Etienne probably are going to have the best chances to be in the first round. I think they will be first round players. I think somebody could sneak up to get Javonte Williams too. Last year we only saw 1 running back go in the first round. That was Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the last pick. But I do think some teams really want to add some continuity to their backfield. And keep in mind, there's no combine this year. It's only been pro days.
Right.
So teams are going to probably be a little more aggressive in getting skill players that they might not be able to get later. So I could see 2, maybe 3 in the first round, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was just 1.
Okay, so if we move to tight end, this is kind of like, I always get nervous about 5 players at tight end, right? Because it seems like there's a clear-cut 1.
Yes.
And then there's lots of debate. So maybe we shouldn't spend too much time on the tight end.
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 names for this one. So obviously Pitts, everybody's big on Pitts.
Like, who's your comparison to Pitts?
So Pitts only has 1 full year as a starter. And of course, he had a bunch of looks, splitting time in previous years. Everybody's just enamored with the athleticism of this player. I do buy it. Don't get me wrong. I think with tight end, it's really hard to have success as a rookie and have an immediate impact.
Right.
I think it takes a couple of years to have some real return fantasy wise. But I think the ceiling for this guy is Shannon Sharp. And Shannon Sharp, is, as many people forget, was actually a wide receiver in college. And Kyle Pitts kind of played mostly as a wide receiver, even though he was listed as a tight end, but he lined up a lot at X and slot.
That's why Jimmy Graham got so much money.
Yeah, but you look at what Shannon Sharp did with the Broncos. I mean, he was a matchup nightmare, and I think Kyle Pitts definitely fits that form.
Okay.
Everyone's like, he's going to go like top 10. I don't know about that.
I wouldn't do that because it's more of a bust at tight end than there it is a hit, right?
Well, think of the tight ends that have gone in the top 10, Trevor. Vernon Davis, TJ Hawkinson. Were they worthy of being in that top 10 selection when you compare them to who else those teams could have had?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Exactly, right? Like you know, it's like, I think tight end is easier to replace as wide receiver is in the NFL. But I do think he's a tremendous athlete.
But okay, so then let's just go with that. And he starts dropping. Like, does he go like Rodgers and starts dropping? Like, you know what I mean? Because like it's by need, right?
I don't think he gets all the way to 24, but I could see him sliding to like 15.
Yep. So
maybe 20. But I think
it might be 16 because the Patriots are 15 and they're not going to be. I mean, it depends if they trade down, but yeah.
I think an offensive coach or a quarterback is going to be in the GM's ear and saying, "Get this guy now." And I think he's going to succumb to pressure is what would transpire. The other two guys at tight end that I really like are Pat Freiermuth from Penn State. This guy has got this guy, like he made some Gronk-like catches at Penn State. Very physical player. Even wears Gronk's number. Like, I'm not going to say he's Rob Gronkowski, but I do think he could be like a Todd Heap or Jason Witten, have very good success in the NFL. Penn State, perennial program, so no issues there. And then the other guy I really like, and this school has been a kind of an under the radar tight end factory, but it's Brevin Jordan from Miami of Florida. This guy, you know, not the fastest tight end or certainly not the best run after catch, but he can block very well. We've seen the U produce great tight ends like Vernon Davis, Jimmy Graham, you know, a few others that are escaping me, but I think he's going to get some consideration. And I think a team that, you know, could use a second tight end to create some matchup issues. Maybe the Titans take a chance on him with the departure of Jonnu. I think he could be a good player in the NFL. I do have the other two guys, Hunter Long and Trey McKitty, but I don't think they're going to be, you know, day two guys. But I would say Freiermuth and Brevin will probably be day two guys, and I think they could be difference makers for teams.
Yeah. Okay, now where do you want to go in regards to
Well, I'll give some defensive players just to keep an eye on. You know, I think Patrick Surtain II, the son of Patrick Surtain Sr., longtime NFL corner, the corner from Alabama. I think this guy's going to be a transcendent player. Very, very gifted corner, can do it all, man, zone, press, you name it. Smart player. We've seen a lot of DBs come into the league where their fathers were DBs. Antoine Winfield Jr. this past year. They've had immediate success in the NFL. I think Pat Surtain, whoever gets him, could be the best defensive player in this class. Now, the other guy I really like is the linebacker from Penn State, Micah Parsons.
I love that guy.
Two scouts have said this guy is Patrick Willis. And we all remember how good Patrick Willis was when he came in the NFL. I think Parsons is very gifted. Penn State has been, you can make the argument in the Big Ten, the linebacker university. They've produced so many players at that position. Parsons measured very well at his pro day. Very strong player. You know, I think Bobby Wagner. I think Pat Willis. I think you know. I think
like how high do you think he's going? Are you thinking?
I think he's top 10. I think he's a top 10 player. And I think a team like the Panthers or maybe the Giants, if they want to trade up, can get this guy.
Call.
I think
Good call.
I think if you get him, your defense just becomes better overnight.
Yeah, you got to get a guy. All right, who's your next guy?
So I'll give two more defensive players, and then we can get into some team needs here. Gregory Rousseau, pass rusher, LSU. Think he's going to be a tremendous player overall. And then Caleb Farley, corner from Virginia Tech, long-armed corner. I think he's going to be very physical. I also like J.C. Horn as well. Corner's a very good class overall. Lots of athletes, lots of long arm guys, lots of tall guys too, like 6 feet, 6'1", 6'2". Tons of reach overall. But this defensive class, Trevor, is not very good in the defensive tackle spot and the safety spot. There isn't really a lot of top tier guys. It's kind of like more middle of the pack. But I think like at the premium positions, like linebacker, corner, defensive end, I think you can see a lot of guys go early. Offensive tackle is a very good class this year as well. So if teams are looking to get, additional linemen in the pipe, Penny Sewell, the tackle from Oregon, he could be a left tackle, a guard, right tackle. I think the Bengals would be silly not to take him at 5. And if he doesn't go to Cincinnati, he's definitely going to Miami at 6.
Right.
But this class for tackle is very good as well.
Okay. So what teams you want to jump into here?
Well, I think we got to start with your Packers, man.
Okay.
Like the Packers. This is a huge draft for the Packers, I think, in terms of keeping the gang happy. 2 NFC championships, no Super Bowls. I think they should have ran the ball there instead of kicking the field goal, as we all know. But you look at what they did with Devontae Adams this year and Aaron Jones, it was tremendous. And AJ Dillon coming on late. But I think if you're the Packers, you got a late pick. I think you got to get a receiver or a tight end. Like you need to add. Whoa. I'm serious, man.
Well, okay. Wait a minute. With our first pick,
yes,
at 29.
Yes. Well, what do you think they need? Do you think they need to go?
No. I want a corner.
You want a corner?
Big time, because Kevin King is on a 1-year deal. He's a Band-Aid right now. And we need another guy. And that draft class is strong. And so I know this is not going to happen, but J.C. Horn is the guy I'm hoping to get.
I don't think he's going to be there.
I don't think he's going to be there. But what do you think about Asante Samuel Jr.?
But I would say this. I'd say corner is a need, but I think they're okay. Jair Alexander's a shutdown, so they really just need either King to play well or somebody else to step up. With who they have to be successful at that position. I think the glaring need is they need to add another playmaker across from Adams so that he can draw some.
I agree. But in our history, we don't do that.
No, you don't.
So I'm just talking from our history. I don't think we're going wide receiver. And we're not going tight end if Pitts is not available. Why would we go for a guy who you can get in the 60s or 70s?
But Freemuth might be available. He'd be pretty good. Toney might be available at 29. I think one of those guys, if they're there, I think the Packers make the call. Keep in mind too, the Packers haven't really historically traded up. They did it for Love last year. But if they get a call where it might be good to go up, maybe they see a guy that they want to invest in. They could also go offensive line. They could also go D end if it is there. But I think for me, like, it's got to start out with playmakers to not only to help Aaron Rodgers out, but to also keep him happy.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And if we draft a wide receiver, I'm not going to be upset.
No, you're going to be pumped because you'll be ordering that guy's jersey tomorrow.
Okay, so what other team do we want to jump into?
I know you got a lot of Seahawks fans.
Yeah.
that watch.
And I like watching the Seahawks. I think they're fun to watch.
I think the Seahawks were my first love. And then, they just ripped the heart out of me when they decided to throw the football on the 1-yard line. But with the Seahawks have made all the stops to try and keep Russ happy. And with them, they only have 3 picks. They had the least amount of picks compared to any team because they traded all that in the Jamal Adams deal and a bunch of other deals as well. So they only got a second. They only got a second and I think a third and a sixth. I think that's what they have, or a seventh.
So they're going to pick 3 linemen?
Yeah, well, I think they're going to trade back to accumulate picks because that is typically what John Schneider has done. But if I'm the Seahawks, I'm still looking at that offensive line. I don't think it's their key need, but I think it's their key need to keep Russ happy because it's a make or break season for them with this marriage. And I know Pete Carroll has been mostly the guy to control the draft board. So would I be shocked if he went defense? No. They could go defense because they do have some holes, especially at cornerback with the departure of Shaq Griffin. But I don't think they're going to be able to get the premier talent they need to replace that kind of player. So the Seahawks either got to make a move or make a splash in some respect to either get some depth or have a couple more dart throws later in the draft. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of unfortunate for them that they traded all that draft capital to the Jets to get Jamal Adams, where he had more sacks than passes deflected this past year. And that's not a good look if you're a safety in the NFL.
Right. Okay, what's the next team you want to talk about?
So I know you also got a lot of Cowboy fans as well. Yeah, and everybody likes to talk about the Cowboys, right? No, we all.
Well, in this area, people like you either love or hate the Cowboys, and so I don't know if you know this, but I had season tickets to the Cowboys. So do you know that?
What a great! I did know that. Know that. What a great team to have season tickets for because you know why? They always sell.
Yeah, they do, and I was selling those seats. I only went to one game in all the years I had season tickets, but
with the Cowboys,
they're at Cowboys.
10. Yeah. They're at 10. They got a lot of options. They pick ahead of the Giants and the Eagles. So they get the first dibs in the NFC East to be like, we're getting our guy, and we know you want this guy, and you covet him, right? And Jerry just loves to rub the salt in their wound to his division rivals. I think the Cowboys' big needs, if you ask me, I mean, OL is one, but I think it's in the secondary still. They could get like Pat Surtain the second at the corner. Or Caleb Farley or one of those two guys to build a foundation upon. I think the Cowboys, when their defense is at the most success, they got like prime time shut down corners.
Right.
Like
no pun intended.
But yeah, with Dion, but like the Cowboys defense, like, early in the days they had like Randy White and Bob Lilly and all these old guys in the defensive front, but like they've really been like an umbrella team built down, where they've had such a deep secondary that, the box players are able to just pick it up, and they're able to get guys like Leon Lett and all these other old Ken Norton Jr., all these old other Cowboy players in like later rounds to build their success, but their primary draft capital was spent on corners. Mm-hmm. I think they're gonna go secondary, and I think they should go secondary. It's most appropriate. They could go playmaker too. I mean, they have no shortage of playmakers for Dak, but they could always add continuity. I mean, Pitts would be unreal in that offense. That would be such a lethal.
Yeah, because they're not going wide receiver, and they're not going running back.
No. I think if they're going to go any offensive player, it's Pitts. But I think its defense will be Jerry's focus.
Yeah, I agree
as well. I think we'll finish off this episode with my boys in Las Vegas.
Right.
And
so
you know what I love about the draft, Trevor, is the Raider unknown. The Raiders always go off the board. They always take the guys that nobody said. They're the only...
but yeah, I agree with you. But now it's different management. Does Maylock go off the board?
Well, I'm not sure, but the Raiders are so unconventional. Keep in mind, they're the only team in NFL history to draft a punter and a kicker in the first round. So they are just crazy then. I think there definitely needs some help at corner. They definitely need help at defensive end. They just retooled their offensive line, so they need help there. But I would welcome, like, if Pitts was at 17, I'd be like, draft Pitts to pair with Waller. Or if they had DeVonta Smith or Jalen Waddle at 17, draft him to pair with Ruggs, right?
That's crazy.
It is crazy, but you know
That's
what?
crazy, man. Why would you draft Pitts when you have Waller? That's a terrible idea.
John Gruden, man, he's a madman. Everybody knows it.
Okay, I'll throw one at you. What if they went quarterback?
If they went quarterback, I'd be okay with it. I mean, Carr's a very underrated quarterback overall. He's had actually a very decent career with the Raiders, but he's only 2 years away from his contract being expired. So it wouldn't be a bad investment. I mean, they're pretty deep at quarterback with Mariota as well, left on a 1-year deal, but he wants to be a starter elsewhere, so they could trade him. But if they went quarterback, I wouldn't hate it.
Okay. That's interesting. So that's one I like Carr. I think he's okay. Think he's good enough. But I would love it if they went there. Okay, I know that you wanted to stop here, but I want to ask you about one team,
Sure.
and this is the team I want to watch for the next number of years in the draft. I want your take on what Miami's going to do in the first round. They have 2 picks, right? They're at 6, and where are they? 18, 6 and 18. So do they keep those spots? Do they trade back? Do they trade up? What do they do? And what are their needs? Because I think with this trade, getting all those picks, it is insane. I think we're going to see them be as good as the Dolphins back in the day with Dan Marino. Something's going to happen there. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think the NFL is better when the Dolphins are like a flashy top team. Like, and this trade they engineered with the Niners, basing it off the Laramie Tunsil deal, was incredible. So I could see them trading back from 6 if the Bengals take the guy that they want or the Falcons take the guy that they want. But I think they're going to stay at 6. I think it's probably more likely they trade back from 18, especially if there's an offensive player that teams covet. They can definitely negotiate it for more draft capital. They have a lot of seconds. They have a lot of thirds. Their needs are kind of shoring up a bit. I mean, they certainly need help in the box. They need help on offensive line, defensive line. Their secondary is the best in the NFL, I think, with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. But this is a team where, they got caught with their pants down after holding a playoff spot for 3 weeks until the season ended. So they have a tough time protecting leads. They have a tough time catching up. So, how do you resolve that is add on defense, pass rush, add offensive linemen to protect Tua. I think Tua, now that he's had a full offseason healthy, is going to be huge for him in terms of his development curve. And Miami really hasn't had any continuity at quarterback since Marino retired. So, I mean, they've only made the playoffs twice since then, and their quarterbacks were Chad Pennington and Matt Moore. So I think with Tua, he's got all the potential in the world. They could add running back too. I mean, Gaskin and Ahmed were great players last year, but maybe they want to go bell cow running back to shore up that position. I'm not sure. I like their chances. I think the Bills are going to have a tough time with them next year. I think the Patriots are also going to be tough in that division on defense. But Miami's just got so many picks. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded back, not in the slightest.
Okay, but yeah, okay. I'll run with you on that one because now, like, if they have a lot of 2s and 3s, do they really want to go backwards? They probably want those ones. Maybe what if they took that 18 and a second and move up in the draft? Like, okay, for example, so you're and I agree with you. I don't think Miami's moving out of 6 because really, at the end of the day, you have 3 quarterbacks in the first 3 picks that we all think is going to happen. So basically, if you're not in need for a quarterback, you have a top 3 pick.
Yeah, and my argument is with Miami, they might have such a deep draft board that they can pick and choose. They can pick and choose if they want to move up or go down. And I think it's probably more likely that they go down because they can find more continuity at the positions they need because they're deeper at that.
Right.
Like the Dolphins, could use talent, of course. But I think they're going to be able to recoup that with just their first pick alone.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Yeah. So I think that I'm looking forward to what the Dolphins do. Like, it's just really exciting to me. I know, like, you're a Raiders fan, I'm a Packers fan, but this is what we like about the draft is like we're actually interested in what everyone does and who's drafting by need, who's drafting by that guy is so talented he has to be on. We cannot pass on him, and maybe that's the Pitts pick that's going to be really, really interesting. I mean, like, I think if Carolina goes after a tight end, or Detroit or Denver, they're nuts. There's other positions they need. That's my personal opinion. But a team like Dallas or the Giants or maybe even the Philadelphia Eagles, the Chargers got rid of Henry. They could go tight end. Like, this is what I'm saying is like there's all kinds of little things there that is so important, and I'm so excited about that.
Well, that's why you watch the draft too. The draft is exciting because when a trade happens, or when the pick is in, or like a team goes off the board, it creates buzz, right? And in the NFL, like, there's so much draft lore. Like, teams have missed their first round picks and fallen in selection. Go see the 02-03 Vikings. Or teams have traded their entire draft for one player, Ricky Williams with the Saints. Like, the draft is just so exciting, and it's made for great TV into what the event it is. So I'm really happy I was able to give your listeners and viewers some insight into the class. Go take a look at sites like walterfootball.com, Fantasy Pros, ESPN, Mel Kiper. Like, these sites will give you so much information in terms of who your team picks. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for having me on. Really,
yeah, man, I'm so excited to have you on. And as everyone's watching, like, listen, this is why I talk to Stu, because Stuart is the guy that goes deep. I love the comparisons. I love the bold picks. Like I said, it's not a science. You gave us great analysis. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. I'm going to be doing another one just solely on what the Packers are going to do. Actually going to do a mock draft.
Awesome.
I think it's going to be fun. So, and then I want to do one of post draft too. So if you're into drafting like we are, you want to make sure that you hit that subscribe button and follow this channel, because we're going to bring some good draft content. And I just want to thank you again, Stu. Thanks for being here.
Well, I appreciate it.
And like we always say, go Pack, go. Oh, sorry. And so
no, around here, Trevor, we say commitment to excellence.
Nice. Good. That's well done. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.